Hello, hello, everyone. Kenny here, Basketball Rewind. Guess what? We're here to talk draft talk. So we're going to be talking about Dylan Harper, of course. Man out of Rutgers. Brother was a Raptor for a short stint. Dad does not want him to go to Utah, reportedly. And dad played with Michael Jordan. Dylan Harper is reportedly 6'6", 215, and I believe he was definitely a McDonald's All-American, and of course, 6'10" wingspan. I think if you add on the afro, he's probably 6'10". So yeah, I'm gonna just get right into it, and we could just go from there. So Dylan Harper has been at times compared to Cade and James Harden. Definitely a lefty. I think it's called is Southpaw. If you're
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
So there you go. For those of you who yeah. But yeah. So one of the things that I noticed about it is I just laid out his measurements. He is entirely crafty. Is able to snake pick and rolls, and his craft combined with his size on the offensive end is what sticks out to me. Now we will get to areas of weakness at the very end, but we're going to just start off with his offense. And to me, I speak, if you speak of his craft, I will say that he does have the impressive refinement that you would say that people take years to get. And I think it comes from the osmosis of being around his father for that many years. And I think that has played a big role into his overall offense. Now, before I pass it over to Beyond or Coach, whichever one wants to decide that they want to go, I think I'm going to go with Coach on this side, and then I'll end it off with Beyond. I'll just finish off by saying he is a little bit of a below average jump shooter if you look at the numbers overall without giving any further context. However, I will, and I'll give Bailey when we come to it, the same grace that I will give this man. He's had to be a jump shooter at times because other than Bailey, the rest of the team is lacking. And right now, it skews his advanced numbers to being below average as a jump shooter. But if you dig a little bit further into the jump shooting numbers, number one, he's above the 80th percentile for catch and shoot opportunities, and he's 90th percentile for unguarded makes. So again, I know people love the shot quality metric and all that kind of stuff. Well, give him good, easy looks, he'll knock it down, right? What's most important, he gets to the rim. You talk about paint touches and all that kind of stuff. He gets there to a substantial amount, and he converts, and he draws fouls. When I get into the numbers of how often he goes to the line, it's pretty impressive. He goes around just a tad under 6 times a game, so 5.8. He shoots the ball 75%, right in that Raptors range, actually a little bit above. He rebounds the ball pretty well, and I would say, right now he has shown the potential to be a better playmaker, but right now he is a scoring facilitator. That's how I will define him for the rest of this conversation to avoid any sort of, things. We will get into that later. Coach, your thoughts?
I like Harper, 6'6", 220. That's a big guard, especially if he's playing point. And I know Beyond has said, drafting big guards, if you can, you do so. And I even know this from being in college. Every college recruiter or program, they want big guards too. It's no different in the NBA. Everybody wants a big guard. I think Dylan Harper certainly offers that. To me, when I watch him play, and just knowing his pedigree, and I say that kind of from his father as well, the family, I look at him as maybe the safest pick in this draft. That's not a knock against the talent that he has. I just know for a fact he is going to be a very good basketball player. Does that mean he's going to be the best in the league one day? I can't say that. I don't know that. If I had to project out, I'd say no. but I just think he's going to be a very good NBAer. I think he's going to be a multiple time All-Star. Maybe he makes an All NBA team in there as well, which I think he would hope for a number two pick at some point. But the way that he plays both ends of the floor, his strength, and when he's going to the basket, he can use his body to angle it well when going up for baskets. He's a decent jump shooter. I mean, he's shooting 48% from the field this year. That's pretty good for a guard. Get you about 5 rebounds and 4 assists. I think it will be interesting to see where he's going to go this year because wherever he goes, he's probably going to be starting. He should be. And to see how he's going to lead a team on offense. He goes to Washington, he's starting. He comes here to Toronto, people, he's probably going to be starting, in which he should be. So let's see where Dylan's going to land, but I like him. I know he's the number 4 high school prospect for ESPN 100, but he's probably, I see him going number 2 or 3 in this draft, I think.
Beyond your thoughts
Yeah,
on his offense.
yeah. I mean, coach has summed up a lot of it. I mean, what I like, I mean, first thing, you talked about it, a big physical guard, is always something I like. He's got a physique kind of like reminds me a bit of like physical wise, like Jason Kidd, a very physical, solid type of frame. It's about the same height, maybe an inch taller than even Kidd, but I like that type of guard. They're, usually they tend to be more durable in the NBA. I also like the fact that he does have the ability to kind of hit a multitude or myriad of shots. I call them in this case, I like to call them pro shots. They're not college shots where it's like I'm spotting up from like wide open for a shot or I'm getting a layup around the hoop from a backdoor cut or anything. He's got pro looking shots. Like, to your point, snaking pick and rolls and pulling up from the elbow. That's an NBA shot. That's a playoff shot, by the way. You know, he's got shots like that, turnaround jumpers. He's got all that type of stuff in his game. I love it that much. I think the refinement of his game right now, he might be a little bit ahead of some of the other guys that we're going to talk about in this draft from that perspective. And that's probably got a lot to do with his brother and his father in this case here. Ron Harper, by the way, if you folks don't know, in this case, he multi-time champion, 5-time champion, I believe, 2 with the Lakers, 3 with the Bulls. And he's a big-time scorer in his early days, in Cleveland. So I do like that about him. I think also too he has this goes maybe also to I don't want to put it all on his pedigree and things like that, but because you don't necessarily have to have this type of mindset, but he definitely has kind of a business mindset to him that I like as well too. Like he's all about business. He ain't trying to come to the joke around. I think that would be helpful if there was the Raptors. I think that would be helpful for that type of personality. So yeah, I like a lot of what he does. He attacks the hoop. He really, to your point, Kenyon, he draws fouls, which is always a good sign there. Like the thing is, what I like with him, he's drawing fouls, but he's not trying to get fouls. There's a difference. He's attacking and he's drawing fouls the old-fashioned way.
It's also another form of game management too, right? There's obviously the facilitator aspect, which we'll get into, a bit later. But also, being able to draw fouls is a great way to control a game.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
So you can control tempo real well there. So there's a lot to like with it. I mean, like he's gonna go early in the draft, so I mean, you get your beer and pretzels quick because I think he may be off the board pretty soon if you come late to the party on draft night.
You size up with him too.
Yeah.
Like Coach mentioned this in our last segment that we were talking, where he mentioned that we need to get bigger. And one of the things that I like about a lot of the top 3, at least, perceived prospects, actually a lot of the prospects in the top 10 will say, actually, you get bigger, right? I didn't like that about this year. Obviously, we didn't perceive Klingon and Zach Edey going as high up as they did initially. But, a guy like Reed Shepherd or Rob Dillingham, they were not sizing you up. Like, no. They might get you better skill wise, but they're not sizing you up.
Right. Hey, shouts out to Rob Dilly, man. Not having a bad little
He
season.
is having a good season, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I like about Harper, to just say this one point on defense, with his size, he's able to guard probably 3 positions on the floor. Point guards, 2 guards, threes. I think he can match up with just that 6'6". If it's true that he's 220, you can physically match up with threes that way. Maybe even some small fours if you get up on switches. So I think that's in Harper's favor. as well. I mean, that's really attractive to a team when you can draft a 6'6" point guard, like Beyond had said, like a Jason Kidd type. Not the greatest athlete in the gym, but just someone who's really intelligent, sees the court well, knows how to use his body when he needs to, knows when to change gears, change speeds. If you're not the fastest guy on the court, you have to learn to change gears. And I think Harper will have to do that, and I think he will do that.
Yeah, I do think that he also, to your point about learning how to change gears, I will say he doesn't get sped up too much.
No,
And I
no.
like that. I like a guy that can play at his own pace. In the sense, I'm not saying Luka's the ultimate version of that, obviously, or in some respects, Harden pre-playoff Harden, but Harden, where you kind of like manage the possession by possession, and that's actually something that's important before switching over to the defensive end. I do like that some of these prospects they really value possessions. It's something that is really lacked on this team. So regardless of how whether a guy is distributing or not, you got to value your possession. You really do, and we don't have that right now. Sans Brandon Ingram because Brandon Ingram hasn't played. So if that changes tomorrow, folks, well, yeah, you didn't hear it here. So yeah, I think moving along to his defense, then I'll go in reverse order. Defensively, I think is where some people have question marks. I don't see question marks personally. I think his defense is quite solid. I think he projects as an average to above average defender. He does a lot offensively, so I can't get too down on him. But I will say this: he's much better on ball than off ball. I won't use the Space Cadet moniker or anything like that. But what I will say is that there are times off ball that he is a little bit focused on what's in front of him or gets caught ball watching. It is something that you can kind of like coach out. So I'm not too worried about it, but that's one of the things that I notice. But there's a term or there's a phrase that they say, stand your own bounce. He can stand in his own bounce, especially with those measurables. The way that he, we talk about the agility for him. I find that at his size, he can kind of go through screens and like literally go through screens, but also he can fight through screens. I'm not saying that he's going to be chasing around the next prime Steph type of thing, but he can hold his own defensively, but he's not necessarily going to be a defensive quarterback. Beyond.
Um, yeah, I think overall he's solid enough on defense that he won't be a liability for you. I think one of the things that I'm curious to see, and I'm not sure when we talk about if we're going to talk about things that can improve, but I think his measurables in my mind something I'm curious to see when the combine comes up when it comes to things like wingspan because I'm
Right.
curious to see what that looks like because to coach's point the wingspan will determine a lot if you could kind of scale up the deal with bigger players in this case. The wingspan can make up for that. If it's not what it's supposed to be, then it limits a little bit. Maybe he's only able to guard ones and twos, and that's nothing wrong with that too. That's fine. You can't say guard small forwards. It's just a nice benefit to have if you can. But overall, he's decent enough. He makes some rookie mistakes as a freshman as well, like any other freshman would. Um, so he's solid enough on defense. I don't think I agree with you. I think he's a little better on the ball than he is off the ball. Um, he's also a pretty decent rebounder, I think, too. So I think like because of that size, he's all right. He can go get it if he has to. So I mean, there's things about him. There's a lot of things I like with him as a player, man. And I think the coach's point. I think there's a certain type of responsibility or mindset he has that I don't think it's hard for me to see him becoming a flop. It is very hard. Like I just can't see him getting drafted. It's like, oh boy, you're 3 months into it. It's like, what the hell did we do? I don't see so. I think he's going to be a very solid to very good player in the NBA.
Yeah.
If you
No.
told me next year, let's just say we were to draft him, we had the number 2 pick, we take Dylan Harper. If you told me my core next year is going to be Scotty, Brandon Ingram, and Dylan Harper, you're setting yourself up pretty good. And grading, right? I told you guys there was a time I said, man, can you imagine a backcourt of Dylan Harper and Grady? Because they're almost opposites in a sense, right? And I think there's more balance in that backcourt and there's size in that backcourt too. You get 6'6" and 6'7" in the backcourt. Like you get bigger, you have a dynamic guard in Harper who I think will be able to create and draw gravity. Because I mean, just watch the Rutgers games. It's him and Ace. That's it. And
My man
especially the first
Solo.
of the year before Harper got hurt, he was he was playing some pretty dynamic basketball, especially against Alabama. They couldn't stop him. So there's that part of me where I'm like Harper, Ingram, Scotty, and Grady. Okay, we got you're working with something now. Now he's going to start putting the pieces. Not a disrespect to RJ or Quickly, but Harper's in here. He's got to start. Just
Yeah,
reality.
I think anyone who's drafted in the top four should be looking at starting. That's just it is what it is. I do think that sometimes I've seen, and I understand it, like you there's a preferential treatment towards vets and stuff like that, but at the same time, it's like we have to recognize that talent is talent, and you don't want to alienate talent that just walks in through the door. So if you're drafting top four in most drafts, unless you are a championship level team, that player is probably coming off the bench. I know some people are like, oh, Scotty, sorry, that player is probably in the starting lineup. Like Scotty's a good example where I know some people were like, oh, he was supposed to come off the bench or whatever. I personally didn't see it playing out that way. I know injuries did impact that as well. But in general, when you're drafting in the top four of a draft, unless Jonas Valanciunas, unless it's a draft in stash, that person's usually starting and usually has a significant impact. I mean, Shea is a good example. I mean, Atlanta fans were like, there's no way. It's like, no way. Certainly way. Sar would have probably started there too. Just saying. So, yeah. Final thing, room for improvement. I'm going to go back to Beyond. But my room for improvement is I do think currently he is a better scoring guard than he is an offensive quarterback. And I will say that. I don't think it's over yet, though. I have heard some people call him selfish. I hate that term. I really dislike that term because I think it's used in the wrong way, just like how I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes basketball IQ is used in a derogatory way as well. And I don't like that. But I will say he can be better. However, I will say, remember who his father was. His father needed, Michael Jordan to get better at that. I think he's okay, and I don't think it's at that level. And I do think part of it is, remember, who are his teammates and where his co-star is on the floor. It's not always the easiest pass. I know everyone just says, just dish it to Ace, dish it to Ace, dish it to Ace. I don't think it's just as easy as that to just manage a game. I do want to get Beyond's thoughts on this because I know we've kind of talked about this for sure. But so I do think that there's a little bit of a knock on it, but I do think that there is also room for improvement. Beyond, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I know we've discussed this offline quite a bit. My concern with Harper is just the instinctiveness of getting his teammates involved in the natural instinct to kind of like, I guess, play, make, and pass for his teammates as the first instinct at times. And something I watched with him a little bit more as the seasons progress. I think he's made some strides in that, but I still think it's not a natural thing for him. I think the other thing too I would be a little concerned about, especially on a team like this one, I haven't seen him play well without the ball really. I find times that when he doesn't have the ball, it's kind of like you don't even know he's on the court. And that's something that will have to be something that you'll have to figure out how to work with a little bit because
Right.
this team, he's not likely gonna have the ball in his hands a lot as much as he has right now in Rutgers, not even close. So he's going to figure out how to play off the ball pretty quickly, and that could be a major adjustment for him. The other thing he can't do anything about, but I do think it's something more from a Raptors perspective that I think is you have to consider. I always think about going for the biggest swing, and part of the reason why I say going for the biggest swing is that if you have a guy in this case here from an athletic power standpoint that's like hitting all these certain metrics, I do get concerned a little bit with Harper when it comes to athletic prowess. Let's put it that way, because I think it could be a limitation for him, not necessarily for him to play, but when you have those little moments of high leverage moments where it's the athleticism that shines that is the difference maker. And there's very few players in this case here that have done, if you want to get to that next level, let's say he is to be your top dog um, in the future. I'm not sure if he's that level of athlete yet to do so, unless he. And there's always like I would say there's also exceptions, but the exceptions I find are usually guys that have a high level of skill. They're like the best at what they do in their era. For example, Steph Curry, not the best athlete, but he has a particular skill. To quote my man from Taken, that you got respect. Larry Bird was another one like that, where it's like he got certain particular set of skills, right? So so there's guys like that where it's like their skill set is so high for a certain thing that it shifts chaos. So
now, do you mean like skill in one area or a group of skills?
I'm saying
like a toolbox.
A toolbox. I usually say in this case here, it's a toolbox, but it's usually one skill. It's so dominant that it puts fear in the defense, and that causes the havoc. So therefore, it compensates for the lack of athleticism, right? If I'm Steph Curry, if I know I can just go raise my eyebrows, the guy's going to shoot up to the roof in this case here, I don't need to be at the big gym.
Right.
That's a shoot a 15-footer. It's like, or go right in the hole because like five guys are jumping at my jump shot in this case here. Same with Larry Bird. I watched Larry Bird for years doing just a shoulder shrug, and a guy's flying out in the second row, and he's like, whoop, finger roll, because they're so fearful of that shot. So, like, if you have that type of skill set and you don't have the athleticism, that's the way you can compensate.
I mean, his game is floor-oriented, but with a lot of skill and the body to get to the rim. So,
true, but it's funny you mentioned in this case, Mr. Harden. I could also make that description for him. He's an ultimate great. But one of the reasons why I think in this case he struggles in this case when we get to postseason is that athleticism or lack thereof, it hits him in the playoffs. Because now all of a sudden you're getting everyone's best shot and everyone's scouting what you have. So everyone knows your tricks. So do you
think Harden ball, like the style of play? Because to your point, Harden was a good off-ball player. Yes. So if you can turn that into a good off-ball player and a good on-ball player, does that shift?
It would help a bit in this case here, but I do think there is an element of like just raw athleticism. I just go back to championship teams. If he's the number 2 guy, it may not be as much an issue. But if you're thinking him to be the centerpiece later on in the future, that is the only thing I wonder. And that's why I go with the biggest swing. That if you think he's going back to what Coach mentioned at the beginning, in the previous episode, if you're looking for the highest end talent you can get, and that's gonna be the question. Could he be that? And that's all I'm saying. I think he's pretty close, a la Harden, but I ain't sure he's that. And that's all I'm saying where it comes to him is like, is there other options out there that if you have that choice that might be later on down the road, those guys can reach that level because they have that little athleticism element that says, you know what, it's a different level. And that's all I'm saying. Like, there's in my mind, put it this way, even though Harden in this case here, statistically, people say he's a better player than Westbrook at their prime. But when the moment came in the finals, Harden was nowhere to be found in this case here. And in playoff series after that, when we got the conference and finals level, you didn't even get the finals level, just conference level. One thing I never had to worry about Westbrook. He always going to be there. Now, he may not always make the right decision late, but he going to be there because he has that athleticism. And he dropped 40-something out in Miami because he could take it to a level that I don't think Harden can in those high leverage moments. And that's what I'm saying. Now, there's other elements to Westbrook why he couldn't get over the hump, but physicality was not one of them.
Right. So you for Harden, you don't think it was mainly physical. People attribute it to mental, but he wore down.
Right, it's wore down, and the fact that the athleticism wasn't there. That when the scouting's on everybody, you just gotta make a play. And are you good enough athletically to make the play?
Now, I will say one thing, and then I'll toss it to Coach. I do think that he's coming in as a better defender than Harden.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Which that also helps.
Yeah. True, but to be fair to Harden, in the OKC days, Harden wasn't bad as a defender. Is when you got 35 a night in this case here, you got to do everything you want on offense when the defense started really slipping.
Fair. Coach, your thoughts? What is your room for, do you have room for improvement? The biggest, as my mom would say, the biggest room that we all have in our house. Quoting my parents this time.
To what Beyond said, just that floor general aspect to his game. I think it depends on where he gets drafted to. because like Beyond had said earlier, and I had to think about this afterwards because he mentioned Beyond, I think about him playing some off ball, like playing at the two. He has the size to play the two if you already have an established point guard. So do I see a world, I'm just using Toronto for an example, where they want to have quickly as the point guard? Could I see Harper coming as a two? I could see that. I truly like to have Harper and Grady for that matter in the backcourt. But that's just me. But I do see a world where they maybe try that out if they're not too sure about RJ, or if Ingram's hurt or something like that to start the year. We'll play RJ at the three and Harper at the two, and we'll go quickly at the one. Maybe they try something like that. But regardless of where he goes, he'll be playing guard. He's probably going to be a bit of a lead guard. He's that dynamic guard of wherever he goes, and I'm assuming in the top five, because none of them really the top five teams have dynamic guards, like outside of Charlotte.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great point. Great point. Um, any final thoughts on Harper, Coach? I'll lead back to you, and then I'll go round table. I don't really have much else to say. I've said all that I have to say, but we will talk about rankings later on, um, and then I'll do the Tankathon sim, and then we'll get out.
Yeah, I think I think Harper's going to be a top three pick in this draft. He's number two on my big board as of now, but it's fluid. I think Steve Naismith is fluid. It changes a little bit here and there depending on how guys develop throughout the year. Like we've seen Ace kind of bounce around maybe 2, 3. Harper's going to be 2, 3. VJ, Beyond's guy, certainly he's in that conversation as well. But I think the 6'6" point guard, good strength, good basketball IQ, good sense of that. And like Beyond said earlier, his demeanor. This guy, I don't, and demeanor is so key in basketball, and there's no motor issues with him. I don't think with any of our main picks there's any motor issues per se. So I just think Dylan Harper's a great pick for a team. If there's no Cooper Flagg in this draft, he's probably going number one.
Are you concerned at all about the playmaking facilitation? Do you think he's too heliocentric or focused on getting his own bucket, Coach? Or
Uh, it's the team that he has on with Rutgers. Like it's him
yeah,
and Ace, or they're done. But he's gonna have to change that a little bit when he comes to the NBA. He's gonna have to be a bit more of a facilitator, even if he's not playing point guard. Like in the NBA, you still got to be a little bit of a facilitator as well. But I think he's adaptable. You have him at a young age, and you can kind of coach him into that. But also just give him the opportunities to do so, which is key. I mean, he goes anywhere he's starting. I think that much is clear.
right.
On a side note, he has an ability, and this actually made his superpower. So he has a great ability to split and double teams, which is a loss. I tell you, man.
It
We
is
want to shed a tear when I watch him split a
at
double
that
team.
size too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, it's like one of my guards used to do this all the time. It's such a wonderful
Yes.
thing.
Now, now I will say he does have an assist percentage rate of 28%. So
Yeah, I think he's gotten better as the years gone on. I think part of it was because no Bailey at the beginning of the season. So I
yes,
think
and Bailey was injured to start the year actually, and then came in.
right. So I think part of it was that, and then Coach mentioned the other part of it is like there's not a lot of talent around them, so
Yeah.
it's part of that too, and you start getting into habits because of the scenario you're in. So I think that's something to watch for. It'd be interesting to see how he makes the adjustment because nowadays there's not a lot of teams that have their guard be the if you have heliocentric offenses, there's not a lot of offenses that are heliocentric. If they are, they're not usually the focal point is usually not their guard.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm not a big heliocentric guy. I I'm not saying that you have to play point five offense with him, but yeah, Coach, your thoughts?
Sorry, last point. And I
Uh,
mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned this against Flag or another one of her videos, but I always find good players really stand out against good teams. So
mhm.
against Alabama, Dylan Harper had Harden. We're calling him Harden already. He had 37 points, 2 steals, 15 to 16 from the free throw line,
Yeah.
11 to 19 from the field. Horrific numbers for college basketball. Against
Mhm.
Illinois just a few days ago, 28 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, 11 to 12 from the free throw line. And they won that game, by the way, against Illinois.
Right.
So that's, I always look for that. I can't say the same thing about one prospect which could be in our top 10 who we'll probably cover at some point, who had some top three conversations about 3 months ago and how the mighty have fallen a little bit. I can't say that about the other guy, but with Harper, so far in some of these
You're
big
not talking about
games,
Cooper Flagg, are you?
no, no.
Yeah, I agree. Actually,
Someone who
his
Mr. Facini really liked about 3 months ago, but mind you, things have changed a little bit since then. So
true. I will say his assist percentage is up higher than Cooper Flagg. Now, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying
yeah,
he gets a huge knock, not just from beyond, but from a lot of people about his assists, and I'm just trying to provide the balance. And all these conversations on Basketball Rewind, we try to provide nuance if people are able to keep up with the nuance. And we invite you along for the ride, of course, if you wanna strap in, people. That being said,
where you watch us, we might have some interesting takes.
yes, yeah. But keep in mind, you're probably going to catch it here, not on other spaces. So, you know, at the end of the day, it is Basketball Rewind. Like, comment, subscribe. We are still on that mission to 500, hopefully one day. Yeah, that's really about it. Hopefully you enjoyed this draft talk video, and there's going to be more to come, of course. Probably not going to get through all of the entire first round again, but we will definitely do segments of the top 10, and then we're going to also cover, closer to the draft, of course, some of the the later picks for that Portland pick. That being said, everyone, it is entirely winter outside. Stay safe, stay warm. Do not go outside unless you have to, unless it's safe to go outside. And peace.